where you're from, what you do, and also so people can get to know you a little better as a 50-plus professional, thought partner in purpose. If there was a song that would play anytime you what would be your own personal theme song? All right? Name, what you do, and your personal theme song.
All right, my name is Reginald Porter, recently PhD, so I'm getting used to Dr. Reginald Porter.
All right, let's give it up.
I'm an executive of multiple industries. Recently, I was a senior vice president at ALSAC, which is a fundraising awareness organization for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. I'm sure you probably know that. It's probably the number one not-for-profit, a $2.5 billion industry. I would say, for a song perspective, my colleagues out in the audience would probably think it would be Atomic Dog, which is reasonable. But in this case, it would be probably a mix between Son of a Preacher Man, probably Dusty Springfield version, with Here I Go from Mystical.
Wait, by who?
Mystical.
Mystical.
Here
all
I
right.
Go.
So we.
And it will be mixed together.
Wow. All right. So we have Bow Wow Wow Yippee Yo Yippee Yay, and we have Son of a Preacher Man, and we're going to cap it with Mystical. I love it. All right. We'll ask you more about that a little bit.
All right. We can get into that.
Thank you so much. Dr. Picard.
I'm Bill Picard, primarily from Detroit, Michigan. I reside in Florida most of the time now. My favorite song is easy. I believe. I believe.
I believe.
I was born and raised in a little town called LaGrange, Georgia. Yeah. And I'm very proud of that because when I was 42 years of age, I learned that a black man built the development that I was born on. His name is Horace L. King. Now, I'm a history buff, so I'll bore the hell out of you with these stories. But Mr. King was a bridge builder born in 1819 in South Carolina. But if you could imagine a black man becoming a multimillionaire and building bridges and barns all over the South and winding up his career building a street that I had the pleasure to be born on. So this is my DNA, what I do. I'm probably the second luckiest black person in America. I don't know who's number one. I was never a great college student. I went to school to be a social worker. My company's always been in the top 10, 15 black enterprise since they started. But more important than that to me, I have developed a network of people. I was a McDonald's owner for 50 years and turned out about 22 McDonald's families who are black people who are now in business for themselves. I then went into manufacturing, and don't laugh, we made plastic fuel tanks for automobiles all over America. And then God said to me, you need to go really make some money. And my roommate, relationships, my roommate in college was a guy named Dennis Wayne Archer. He was a special ed major, and I was a social work major. 30 years later, he's the mayor of the city of Detroit, and I'm Negro Republican businessman. And from that relationship, we now own about 20% of the casino in Detroit, known as the MGM Casino. So God has been good to me.
Absolutely.
And we tried to be forthcoming and share that with our community. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. But the most important thing is that one day you ought to just Google. You ought to just Google Horace L. King. Because if you read his story, you know that God is able to bring you through anything, anytime.
Wow, I love that. Thank you so much for that. All right, let's give it up. Let's give it up. So after After that story and after introductions, I definitely can believe even better. And also that song question, I love that because as a music junkie, I get a chance to add some more songs to my playlist. My theme song, actually, it changes every day probably, but I would say more likely it's Shining Star by Earth, Wind & Fire. For obviously, that's what how many EWF fans do we have out here? All right. So let's unpack this conversation more because as we stated, everyone in this room, if we're living and breathing, we will be either at 50 plus or approaching 50 plus, and all of us are looking to excel in our career. So as we talk about being at this season of our lives, let's first talk about mindset, all right? Which what I do through Mid-Career Mastery, I help people get unstuck, and I have a framework called the Malaise to Mastery Map. So when you're stuck and feeling stress, and you're feeling that ennui and malaise that happens a lot of times in midlife, mid-career, you can transform that. And the first pillar, what I call the 3 pillars of transformation, is mindset. Mindset. It starts from there. So do you mind, gentlemen, just sharing some of those best mindset practices and approaches when we're thinking about, as black men, or anybody for that matter, setting goals, accelerating your growth, especially when you're at this middle season of, I guess, mastery, not just malaise in your career. Dr. Porter, would you mind?
Yeah, I would start off by saying thank you for asking the individuals who are not quite 50 yet if they're planning to get to 50. Because you got to get to 50. And there have been a lot of young men who hadn't made it. There are a lot of my friends who hadn't made it. And so health is important. I've heard it in several sessions before, but it's even becoming more critical. I've sat in C-suite positions in a couple of areas, and I will tell you the one thing that you can't be is absent. And even though health is important and you have to take care of yourself, you don't want that to be the reason why you're absent in the conversation in the C-suite. So take care of yourself along the way. All of us, regardless of where we are, need to have an adaptable mindset. Get ready for disruption. I think every industry that we're part of right now will be different in 5 years. 5 years ago was different than it is right now. And so if you don't have the idea that something's going to disrupt your industry and understand how to pivot and adapt to it, you're going to have problems. I would say that you take the time to figure out what can disrupt your industry and figure out how to learn more about what that disruption could be before it gets here so that when it happens, you're ahead of the game and you're ready to go. So I would say adaptability is the word for me.
Adaptability. I love that. That's definitely a trait and a characteristic that all of us in this room, we were joking at the beginning of the session of everyone, is everyone taking pictures and is everyone on IG or TikTok? And some people are like, I'm not on that yet. Just adapt. And as you mentioned earlier, that we're now living in the world of AI, right? We're talking about generative AI, and some people are either scared of it or they don't want to embrace it. I tell all of you, just get to know it. Just so you can at least know the nomenclature, so you can know the language, because people are scared that will AI replace individuals. No, AI are going to replace individuals that don't use AI. So it's something that you should also remember. Dr. Picard, let's talk about mindset. Your thoughts about mindset when it comes to individuals.
Well, ironically, mindset, my first book, which I'm very proud of, was called Millionaire Moves.
Ooh, love that.
I sold about 60,000 copies throughout Black America and White America. And my first principle is vision. You will never be what you cannot see. You must visualize what you want to actualize. And I believe all this ties into mindset.
Yes.
Because they're very closely related. And I would say unequivocally, as a poor kid who was not the sharpest knife in the drawer, from a little country town, it was that vision that just kept me going. And when God gives you the vision, He also gives you the provision to achieve the vision. That's my sermon for the day.
Say that again. Repeat that one more time so people in the back can't hear.
When God gives you the vision, He also gives you the provision to achieve the vision.
I love that.
And I'm a sitting example
Right.
of what God can do.
Yes, you are. So we're going to talk a lot about what's is positive about being in this season, because far too often when we start approaching 50s and 60s, or even prior to that, the 40s, again, we start feeling that feeling of being stuck. We're in that malaise. We're worried about other external factors. And one of those external factors that affect us as far as a personal growth could be ageism, right? When you're approaching 50 plus, there are these biases that affect us all. And not just when it comes to age. I focus a lot on intersectionality. And so think about not only for people who are 50 plus, they may face age discrimination. If you happen to also be a person of color, if you're even a woman, so you talk about the triple isms, ageism, sexism, and racism. But for black men, not only at 50 plus, but we're thinking about the color of our skin. Can we just unpack a little bit unfortunate ills of ageism and how men, especially in this season of our lives, what again I call the magical middle, can attack and circumvent those ills of ageism in the world of work? Dr. Porter, Reginald.
Picking on me today, huh?
I'm
a couple days out of 50. So
okay.
I'm living my best life right now. So I'm not experiencing it as much.
Yes.
I will say a generational thing is in play, and a lot of people don't talk about that. The majority of the generations that make up industries right now are boomers, Generation X, and millennials. Generation X is where I sit right now. And Generation X has a bad place if you think about it, because they have to manage up and they have to manage down.
Right.
They have to manage up to expectations of individuals who were born with the mindset, stay in position for a long time, work your way up, be still, do one thing. With the generation, and don't question anything, just follow directions. With a generation that says, question everything, we can do what we want to, we can show up how we want to. And so a lot of us are having to manage both segments. Here's the problem. Most of the boomers now aren't necessarily in the mindset to leave positions, which doesn't create opportunities for us. And yet they have an affinity for the younger group and give them justification or reasons for them not necessarily following the rules because they don't know necessarily better, right? But if we do those same things as Generation X, we're punished. And so I think that when you talk about ageism, it's not just the fact that people are growing older. It's the fact that you have three different generations, and trying to manage and navigate and work those three together becomes very difficult. As somebody in Generation X, I will say to you, you have to be very good at being a people whisperer and a team builder, and understanding that finding mentors is not just finding older mentors, but finding some of the younger mentors. Because again, some of these younger guys or some of these younger women have avenues to some of the boomers who make decisions. And so in fighting ageism that way from a Generation X perspective, the best vantage point to me is gaining a thorough understanding of all of the ages and being able to pick across all of the ages in order to navigate your way up.
Yeah, that's really key. Mutual mentorship is actually an underestimated and underutilized powerful tool. Ageism. Your thoughts on ageism and how individuals who are not even 50, could be 50 plus or 40 plus, that could be experiencing.
Well, listen, this is easy. Dr. Porter told me he had an opportunity to get a PhD at The Ohio State in mathematics.
Yes.
So I won't dare reveal my age to you, but I'll tell you I was born in 1941.
Do the math. That's a blessing.
And to me, my journey has been lifted tremendously by interacting with people of all different ages and sexes and what have you, but especially the elderly. Now, unfortunately, I was a kid that always hung around. I mean, I'm not trying to be facetious in this room. I ain't no Trump Republican, but I'm a Republican. So I grew up around Republican men in Georgia and Michigan. And these men were the leaders of our communities in the 20s and 30s and 40s. And they were the businessmen and the businesswomen of our community in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. And I have another book coming out on 100 outstanding business success stories from 1850 to 1950. And 35 of them are women. So this age thing is very important. Yeah. I don't spend a lot of time worrying about it. I'm blessed to be where I am. But more importantly, I learned so much from listening and reading and watching other people as they go through this thing called life. So I would tell you, hey, don't focus on something you can control.
Yes.
You can't control your age. Focus on something you can control. But I agree with Dr. Porter here that your health is your wealth.
Yes, yes. So going back to, and I want to unpack a little bit more too on what you said, Reginald, regarding the multi-generational workforce. Because again, we just had a conversation about ageism, right? The ills of age discrimination, which is a real bias that is out there. However, we don't spend enough time as a society talking about the gems that comes with age, that comes with wisdom, that comes with being seasoned in your careers. And in this multi-generational workplace, and again, I'm a fellow member of Gen X as well, Go Gen X. Actually have a podcast, Gen X Amplified. For that reason, I launched it, because many of us were overlooked as a generation. We're the smallest of the multi-generations. You know, boomers are 77 million strong. Millennials surpassed them at 80 million. Gen X, we're 65 million, but yet we still pack a powerful punch. But we are at that critical stage of leadership now. Many of the C-suite executives, many of the ages that we just referenced, they're Gen X. So how do we, as a 50-plus Gen X or even a boomer, how do we navigate this multi-generational workforce? How do we look at the gems? Well, first of all, I love that you said not only keep learning, right? There's a lot you can learn from the baby boomers. There's a lot you can learn from the traditionalists who are older than the baby boomers. There's also a lot you can learn from those magnificent millennials and even the Gen Zs. That's where the power of mutual mentorship. So as we talk about these strategies, let's talk more about the seasoning and the wisdom and the tools in our arrow, in our quiver that comes with age, right? The relationships that you develop over the years, the skills. What are some of those positives that you think and witness firsthand personally in observation? Being a 50-plus professional, what are some of the gems that you can pass on to others that also can help you thrive in your career? Who has some insights on that? Dr. Picard?
I don't know about insights, but I have to give you an example from my life that I hope you will attempt to understand. I get to Detroit, Michigan, and I'm 29, 30 years of age with a couple of McDonald's and God's grace. And I meet these elderly men, 70, 80, black, mostly Republican black men. That was my learning group. Now, I hang out with everybody, but that was my learning group. So there was one gentleman in the group named Mr. Adrian. And he had been a very, very successful retail businessman in Detroit. Now, there was a time when you could not go into a black store and try on clothes if you were black, and vice versa. So Brother Gordon was doing well. He had about 7 stores open in greater Detroit, Ecorse, Inkster, all over, doing extremely well, he and his wife. She took care of the women, he took care of the men. On Sundays at the church, the pastor would say, after church, go downstairs and you can try on the clothes that Sister Gordon and Brother Gordon have brought today, and da-da-da-da-da. So I'm watching him, Porter, in the twilight years, and things are not going well. And one day I said, Brother Gordon, what happened to your business?
Right.
What happened to your business? He said, Doc, The postman got me. I'm saying, postman? What's the correlation between selling a dress and selling a suit and the postman? And this is why I love black folk. This is why I love poor white folks.
All right.
Because we figured out in Detroit, Michigan, and I'm sure in New York and Cleveland and Atlanta, they did the same thing. The major department store was Hudson's department store. And what Mr. Hudson did, when he saw the civil rights thing changing,
right,
he got the white postmen together and gave each one of them $10 for every good colored credit they brought in. And within a year, his business is gone. But the lesson for me was, everything changes. The McDonald's that I know today and I still love is not the McDonald's I knew in 1971 when I walked in. Everything changes. So to me, to listen to these stories and to be able to hear these men and women tell these stories about how their lives change. And I don't mean to be rude, but whether it was a number of men who were the most successful business people black folks ever created. I'm gonna repeat that. The number of men and women were the most successful black business people we ever created. First, the mafia came and took it. And then the government came and put us out of business. I learned from these stories. I met these men and women. And I know the prices they paid to be able to do what they did and how they did it. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. And Brother Gordon is in heaven by now.
Okay.
But that postman is still making money off that $10.
Wow, love it, love it. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I'll take a stab at that.
Yeah.
I consider myself a strategic team whisperer. And you talk to anybody I've worked with, they will tell you I take on projects that literally people just think can't get done.
Got it.
And I work very well with cross-functional teams. And when I'm putting teams together, what I do is I make sure there are younger individuals on the team. I make sure there are some more seasoned individuals on the team. And I do that for a couple of reasons. One, somebody mentioned earlier that they were really good. I can't remember what session it was. They were really good at doing their job, and they were trying to figure out a way to move out. Well, number one, this may sound really weird, but don't be so good that you're the only person that can do something. Because when there's an opening that comes up, the company's going to look at you specifically and say, we can't move you because you're the only one that can do it. So when I get teams together, I specifically have the younger person there, and I specifically have a seasoned person there or people. And what's happening as we're going through the project, the younger folks are probably bringing fresher ideas and new concepts and things that help to move the needle, move the company faster. And the seasoned individuals are adding their perspective, right? Long term, this is what's happened in the past. And what's happened is that I'm developing a team of individuals who now have commonality. And if I walk away, there's a group of people who have now a full understanding of what needs to go on for the organization or for the company. It's helping the older individual become more adaptable and flexible and understanding technologies and things that they need to understand to continue their relevance, which is important as you get older. Your relevance is important. But it's also providing a mechanism for our younger employees to understand the value of being in place for a certain amount of time, or the wisdom that comes along with understand what's happened from a historical perspective. So those are kind of ways I help combat and deal with ageism as well.
I love those strategies.
Reginald, I think that's profound. You should come to my company and help me.
All right.
because that's it right there.
Let me know.
That's what
we'll work it out.
All right, what we're going to do, we're going to talk more strategy, but we want to do it with conversation with you all. So we're going to start some Q&A. So I'm sure you've been listening to these stories, you've been thinking about your own, where you are in your age and your career. And I always like to, before we even get into Q&A quickly, I always like to remind everyone when we have these conversations about midlife, 50 plus, is that we're now living in the era of the 100-year life. Remember that. Like we're living longer. There's extended lifespans. And so when you think about whether you're 45, 55, or 65, this is still halftime. This is still the middle. You know, it's not just misery and malaise in the middle. There's magic in the middle. So remember that. We're living longer. So no longer is the 40-year career where you retire at 65 and you may, reach glory in your 80s or 90s. We're living longer, so we're working longer, but that work looks different now. That work is about meaning and purpose. And so it's not over. Just remember that. And it's halftime. And we're on this beautiful golf course, right? 18 holes. This is the back nine. So the back nine is where really the magic happens. Is where you're really playing your game. So let's get some questions. Who would like to step up to the mic and state your name and your question? State your name and your question.
Good day. My name is David Muir, and I'm an entrepreneur, and as such, my question is related to that. I love talking about where we are in this career. As an entrepreneur, I've been an entrepreneur already for 40 years, and I plan to do it for at least 40 more.
All right.
Saying that, though, translate some of what we're talking about when you talk about mid-career or just planning for the future. How do you change? How do you scale? I guess specifically to Mr. Picard, how do you continue your trajectory as an entrepreneur considering age when thinking about that?
You would direct it to you. You want to take a stab at it initially?
Yeah. I am a prolific reader.
Yes.
I was never a student. I was never a B student. But I'm passionate about reading. And I remember something as simple, and don't laugh at this, as the last mile of the delivery. Who takes the package all the way from New York to D.C.? That's the train, that's the car, that's the truck, da-da-da-da-da. But how does it get from that stop in D.C. to your front door? And that's how I started one of my businesses, the last stop. And I'm not very bright, as you can tell by now. And but I read a lot about business. I love to read about successful people. And by the way, my team just sent me a note about my comments about politics. Listen, I am not a Republican, obviously, but I share those stories with you to share the history of our community, about what we have done to get to where we are. And there was a time that every black man and woman who could breathe was a Republican. That's just reality. Now, if you're that way today, you should see two psychiatrists, So I think, sir, going back, reading is the future. And whether it's Black Enterprise, whether it's Fast Forward, whatever it is about business, I'm picking it up, reading it at night, in the morning, in between breaks and things like that.
Reading. Yeah. I'm an avid reader. Love it. Thank you. Next question. Yeah, let's switch on this side.
Sure.
Name and your question. Thank you.
My name is Kofi Jumpy. I'm with Accenture, do strategy and consulting work.
Okay.
A lot of the things that have been on my mind, particularly now, is ensuring that my family is set up for success, whether if I'm here or if I'm not here, right? I'm in my 30s. What have you seen work and come actually and play out as it should?
Ooh, we need another session for that.
Yeah.
I don't know. But who wants to?
That's a whole lot. But I would say
in
my earlier career, I was focused on impact, right? I wanted a position that was going to have impact in the community and all that kind of stuff. I would say two things. One, you can find a job that has impact that also compensates you well. But I would also say don't get caught up in the base salary, because that's a sales trick. Look at what the company offers from a package perspective, the stock options and things like that. Those types of things and putting money in IRAs and savings ventures through the company itself matches. Those in my mind are probably the things I would have paid more attention to than the base salary.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Let's, over here, question. Name.
Good morning, Chris Turner with AARP, and I promise I'm not asking a question just so they can tell my boss I was actually paying attention here. So my question is this: as a millennial, 41 years old, and realizing every day that I'm closer to 50 than I was to 30, there's been some comments made about my generation on how we tend to move from job to job, location to location. And there's also, you all made the comments about people, and like, you know, boomers, Gen X, staying in these jobs, staying in these, and the upward mobility is decreasing. How do we combat that type of age discrimination? When they look at it, when our resumes are looked at, and it's like, all right, you're going from here to here because there's no chance to move up, because there's no opportunity, but while still maintaining that knowledge and growth so that we can get to that C-suite in an organization without having to essentially, I don't know, just get those opportunities to grow throughout.
That's a great question.
Yeah, I would say, you know, if you look at my resume, I've moved from place to place, right? Start off in higher education, and the mindset in higher education was to move every 2 years so you don't get pigeonholed. But I've moved from industry to industry. But when I moved, I strategically moved to a higher level with more responsibility and a little bit of a different function. The criticism that often comes with individuals who are in the millennial phase is that they move just for a title with the same role responsibilities. And that doesn't necessarily add to the breadth of understanding and the things that you can bring to a company, right? So I'm in a position, I'm a specialist, but there's a small company that it's paying me $10,000 more and it's a director, but you're doing the exact same thing that you did as a specialist. Those are kinds of criticisms that come with that. There's nothing wrong with moving to a different area if it's a director and it actually adds more to your breadth of work. That's a whole different ballgame. I think the Generation X folks got caught between the fact that, honestly, we were told just stay in the same trajectory the entire time, right? You get less stigma when you've moved and actually moved your way up than just move, just because the salary changes.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
I'd like to go
please.
back a little bit.
Thank you.
Now, all of us are a little different. I've been doing what I do for 50 plus years. The only job I ever had was working for the Urban League of Cleveland. It's the only job I had, and from there to McDonald's. But the one thing that I have learned beyond a shadow of a doubt is that relationships leads to my next deal. Now, whether that's true in a job market, I don't know. But every deal I've ever gotten came from a relationship that I had met along the way, that I had said something that I shouldn't have said, or maybe I said something that I should have said.
Yes.
But everything that has happened to me has happened because of a relationship. And just think about this. We all went to college. Most of us went to college. How can you be a college roommate with a guy who is a special ed major? A special ed major. And you are a social work major. And 30 years later, he's passing out franchises for MGM casinos. So I'm a big believer in relationships. Be nice to people, and people will be nice to you. But there's a little extra thing that you can do, in my opinion, and that is just take a little bit more interest in the average, whether it's a job, just take a little bit more interest in the person that you're interacting with. Now, I'm a social worker, so you know I'm screwed up in the beginning. But that would be my thing. Everything I've ever done came from a previous relationship.
Yes, yes. And think about being in your 50s. Think about all the relationships, again, that you have nurtured along the way. That is an asset your network, your relationship. So thank you for that. We may have time for maybe one more question. I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you.
Really quickly, my name is Stanley Rayner. I'm with Travelers Insurance. And my question is directed toward a comment Dr. Porter made about that whole sandwich generation dynamic, where you've been taught most of your career to do a good job in the work that you're doing, but now you come to the point where you're seeing people younger and less experienced than you taking risks and excelling in their career. So I guess my question is, now that you've established a career and now have financial responsibility for family, how do you decide what risks to take to get to that next level?
I don't know if it's a risk to invest in people ever. So I think the risk is not investing in that younger person that potentially could replace you, right? I think that you establishing your relationship with that person as a mentor, gaining that relationship and understanding the things that they can bring to the table. If that person just happens to ascend before you, believe it or not, that person will now be your sponsor. And this is what I say, it's very important for us to start thinking about mentors and sponsors a little bit differently. They can be younger or older, because it's about who's going to be at the table at the time where your opportunity is coming, right? I'm a firm believer that God has for you what's going to be for you. And so the more you interact with people who are younger and older, you have no idea who's going to sponsor you at that table. And if they feel like you were part of their nurturing and bringing up, when they have those conversations with the CEO who likes the younger folks, right? When they have that conversation and they say, you know what, I wouldn't have gotten here if it hadn't been for Dr. Porter. Then now you have an ally, right? So I think the biggest risk is not taking the time to invest in developing those relationships with all the individuals in your group.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for your question. So as we wrap up and just kind of do our final remarks, first of all, again, thank you, Dr. Porter. And no relation, by the way, we have two Porters on this stage, and we're actually from the same city.
Same
right?
city.
So maybe somewhere there's a Rolling Stone in our family somewhere, I don't know.
Your side.
I love it. But we're not related, but thank you, and Dr. Picard. And as I'm so passionate about this topic because, we think about all the dimensions of difference and diversity and intersectionality, whether it's race, whether it's gender, whether it's ethnicity. The one dimension of difference that we all share in this world is age. We're all getting older. We're all, God willing, and so we will age. So how do we attack and be proactive with navigating based on the strategies that my fellow Porter here and Dr. Picard stated? But just always remember that when we're at this season of our lives, 50 is not over. We're living longer. This is the 100-year life. This is the 60-year plus purpose-driven career. And so if you think about that halftime mark, prime time, right? Think about second act. Look at Deion Sanders, right? Yeah. Best athlete probably arguably in the world at this time. His second act, he's creating impact in his 50s by mentoring younger individuals. Think about this generation. And so as we start to go through our feeling that we do in our 50s, where we're feeling like we're stuck or we're not sure how to progress in our career, or no matter whatever your age, just use that self-affirmation and know that we're in a 100-year life, that the middle is halftime. And when you have some time, look in the mirror and repeat it and repeat these words, or you take your phone out, and we can do it here. Just say there's magic.
Magic.
In the middle.
In the middle.
Halftime.
Halftime.
And the back nine.
The back nine.
Is prime time. Now give me my theme music. All
That's
right.
a good one.
Thank you so much.
That's a good one. Reggie, can I wear your card?
I don't have a card, but I'll make sure to get
come
that to
on,
you.
Porter. Now, come on,
don't.
Porter. How can you
And
be?
it's only recent.